Hello there. This is Dr. Terry James Gingras, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat. And if you're wondering what's going on and why it's so late, we had a little technical problem. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but the rotation on the iPhone did not work, and so I ended up dictating not once but twice, and ending up with a vertical pick shot, which would cause you all some problems unless you really like looking at your cell phone while you're lying down. This just goes to show you you can't mess with karma. I just did a pretty big interview about how easy it is to use Facebook Live and how helpful it is and da-da-da-da-da. And I had never had a problem with it. And now, all of a sudden, here I am. I am fighting the thing like crazy. It's just the tech stuff. It's always just the tech stuff. But I want to talk to you about force, fear, and punishment, which basically means we're talking about, with an ADHD kid, is your tendency to want to order them, command them, grab them by the throat and lift them up off the ground until they obey, until they do what you want them to do. It's one of those things. ADHD kiddos they're brilliant, they're creative, they're insightful, but they can be extraordinarily frustrating. And they have problems with control. They aren't good at emotional control. They aren't good at control of attention. They aren't good at controlling their impulses. All those sorts of things. And the other problem they have is that ADHD is a neurologic condition. It's one you're born with. It's highly heritable. The heritability index is 85%, which is extraordinarily high, which means if you have an ADHD child, either you or your partner also has relatives or maybe even has ADHD themselves. You probably want to check that out and make sure. A lot of times when I start out doing an evaluation of a child, I end up doing 2 or 3 members of the family as well. I think my record was 4 kids and the dad in one family. All of them had ADHD. The mom was the only one who didn't have ADHD. I bet she was a busy lady. Okay. The thing you have to understand with ADHD is that punishment is not really that effective. Okay? Now, when we're talking punishment, we're talking about the old behavior modification stuff where you are punishing the behavior you don't want and rewarding the behavior you do like. This makes sense. It's the way animal trainers work, dog trainers and so on, teach tricks and that sort of stuff. Very good for what it's designed for. It is not all that great with ADHD people. ADHDers are virtually incapable of one-trial learning, and punishment doesn't really do it. It doesn't really change their behavior a whole lot. And BMOD has a lot of problems, behavior modification, that is. You end up with this technique, and it's kind of a one-shot technique. You use it again, you keep using it again and again and again and again. Problem is, there's nothing that tells you when to stop. There's nothing in the theory, excuse me, that tells you when enough is enough. And I always tell this story, and I've told it 2 times today already, so I'm getting a little sick of it. But I had a mother come in, giving me some intake information on her son who had ADHD. And she told me quite proudly that he was sleeping on a mattress on the floor in his room, and there was nothing in his room, no toys, no nothing. And they had just recently taken the door off the room as well. Excuse me. She thought this was wonderful. This, can you imagine what that child was thinking? What he was like? I believe she was coming to see me because he was acting out more than he ever had before. Oh, duh. What do you think is the reason for that, perhaps? Power, using those, the old-fashioned parent controls, the old-fashioned, punishment, spare the rod and spoil the child and all that stuff. That honestly has never been that effective. What it does is suppress behavior. But then what happens a lot of times, and almost all the time actually, is the behavior comes back in some new form, perhaps a more virulent form. ADHDers don't have control over a lot of the things that neurotypical kids have control over. So when you are punishing them because they spoke out impulsively, or because they have trouble concentrating, or because they're fidgety, or because they didn't get started on their homework, or that sort of thing, you're punishing them for something that they don't have control over. They have less control over what most folks consider ordinary behaviors than neurotypical kids. So you're going to have, it's just not going to be effective. It's like punishing a kid who is born with a bad knee for limping, or a kid with cerebral palsy for flapping his arm, punishing him for that. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical. It's certainly not effective. And it's going to actually, instead of not being effective, it makes things worse. If you've ever been around a kid or an adult who, as a child, was punished too much, you know what I'm talking about. Okay? Punishment, used judiciously, it actually shouldn't be punishment. It should be discipline. Discipline is what you're shooting for, not punishment. Punishment just means you're a bully. You're bigger than they are, so you can do what you want. And that tends to be passed on to the next generation. And you don't want to do that. Honest, you don't. Okay, what you want to do, first of all, and it takes more work. I'm not saying that it's easy. It takes more work, but you have to help your ADHD child identify what's really going on. What is the problem? Frequently, almost all the time, it's something that they don't think they can handle. Some situation, some skill that they need that they don't think they've got, something like that. And it almost always, they're scared, frustrated, or sometimes they're sad and depressed. Okay? They don't think they can do something, and they've been asked to do it, and perhaps a lot of the other kids can do it, but they're having difficulties. So they blow up. They have a meltdown. They burst into tears, dissolve in a puddle of misery, whatever terminology you want to use, but it's basically the child is signaling that he's got this, he or she rather has got this big problem, and they don't know what to do about it. They don't know what to do. And they have not typically been treated to a whole lot of second chances and rewards and positive reinforcement and compliments and all that other stuff. So they don't trust the big people, typically. The teachers are on them, the coaches are on them, some of their friends are on them. Honestly, probably their parents are on them about their behavior or this, that, or the other. What you've got to do is the hardest thing there is to do is get beyond the current situation and try to think about what's going on. What do I know? What have I observed? What can I tell is causing him or her to get so upset? It's a problem. It's got to be a problem. It's got to be something wrong, something they don't think they know how to do, or something like that. Okay? And so you've got your job is to help them tease that out. Okay? And don't expect it's going to be easy, because I don't know if any kids are really good at identifying their emotions, but ADHD kids are probably a lot less good than most. So they're going to have difficulties, and it's not going to be easy for them. So you're probably going to have to probe a little bit in the nicest possible way, of course, and let them know that you're concerned for them and that you want to help, and that together the two of you are going to solve this problem. Okay, now this is the optimum way for you to not only handle the immediate blow up, the immediate meltdown or whatever, but it also long term gives your child some practice at being resilient, at learning to look at things as problems that need to be solved instead of looking at everything as if it's a character flaw, which is, they get a lot of that. What is the matter with you? Why can't you pay attention? And that sort of thing. So your child, if you're doing this together, and you should be, and you and your child work out what the problem is, and then maybe you teach him or her a specific procedure or technique, or you're his therapist, his or her therapist helps with teaching a specific technique, but you've developed a problem-solving model for handling things, and the problem-solving model focuses on the problem, not on some character flaw, and that's important. That is terribly important. There is no way in the world, I believe, any child wants to do badly at anything. I don't think anybody wants to be a failure, or anybody who's so messed up and angry at the teacher that they want to fail on purpose. Who would do that? What's the reward for that? There's absolutely no situation, system I can think of that failure feels good. That failure is what anybody shoots for, that anybody wants to have, and anybody wants to experience. It's just nuts to think that that's important to somebody, and that they would actually go after that on purpose. All this stuff about, any attention is better than no attention at all is, I think, a bunch of hoo-ha. Kids who go after negative attention are kids who've given up. They don't think they can get any positive attention. And so they are really good at getting negative attention, so fine. But they don't prefer it. And there's no way you can believe that they prefer negative attention to positive attention. So remember, I've talked a lot about the idea of optimal efficiency, optimal effort, optimal creativity is created in an environment when there are 4 positive responses for every single critical response. And I guarantee you there are darn few ADHD kids in the world who've had that experience. But you should try to get as close to that as you can. Number 4-1. It's the Lasoda rule. Lasoda. Look it up. It's very well known. It applies to any group of human beings, actually. Well, marriages, it's helpful if the ratio is a little higher. But basically, you want your child to get a lot of positive and reinforcement. And I don't mean like participation trophies. I mean like actual, hey, you did a good job there. I really like the effort you made on that. I know you really studied hard for that. That kind of thing. Okay? You reinforce the effort. You reinforce the mobilizing resources regardless of the outcome, because your child is going to screw up some. They're going to, even if they make an effort, sometimes they're not going to do that well. But that is something you also should know about based on having gotten a thorough evaluation. And so you know all the weaknesses academically, socially, cognitively, and you can make allowances for and understand you're going to have to teach these kids. You're going to have to teach them more things than you have to teach kids who are neurotypical. They're going to need specific training in how to manage time and ways of being organized and ways of controlling emotions. But you're going to have to do all of that, and it's okay. I mean, that's a good thing. That's a good chance for you to build a relationship with your child that'll last a lot of years. Okay, I think we are done again. This is, like I said, the 3rd time I've done this one, or I guess I should do it like the NBA does. And I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras. I am a clinical neuropsychologist specializing in ADHD, and I'm also the father of an ADHD child. And I'm available at terrygingrasphd.com. You got any comments on the show or anything you'd like to see or any topics you'd like me to cover, please feel free to jot it down at the bottom of this, down there somewhere, and I will try to get back to it as soon as I can. I appreciate you continuing to watch, and we'll talk to you next time, where hopefully we won't have all these technical problems and it'll actually be at 1 o'clock. Okay, bye-bye.